The Flyin Lion says,
Boys, hell is real.
2023 Supporter Shield champs.
Just give me a reason to drink some Guinness in the morning.
Yeah, just a fan of the sport, you know.
I appreciate the opportunity.
It's definitely tougher to be an academy player than it is a pro.
Soccer's my favorite sport now.
The jersey swap was
my car of the week, trivia question of the week.
Welcome back to the Flyin Lion podcast, another off-season edition. Somewhat of a surprising episode. We weren't necessarily planning on this one, but FCC is going to FCC. Sam, how we doing tonight?
Doing good. We got some decisions being made. So you're going to get all of our opinions on that, as well as, some other things being announced MLS wide that we're super stoked for. But doing good today. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, doing well. Had a good Thanksgiving, if you want to call it, break there.
Yeah.
FCC land kind of took a few days off, but there was a lot of rumors going on. The deadline for submitting the roster was last Wednesday, so I was kind of sitting around patiently waiting. Are we going to get some decisions? What's going to go on with the team? And we got it yesterday, Sam. About midday, we started to get, like you mentioned, some of the decisions for the first team, and then today the second team as well. And then Chris Albright decided to have a press conference this afternoon as well. So we wanted to wait to record this episode until we heard from him and some very interesting things that he said. So we'll break down, like Sam mentioned, some of those roster decisions, first team, second team, kind of our thoughts on who's staying, who's going. As we know it, as of right now, December 3rd, subject to change. And then later on in the episode, we'll give you a little bit, again, of what Chris Albright had talked about in that conference. And then we'll talk a little bit about some Lucho news, eyes emoji there if you want to put that into there, and then some notable free agents as we see currently fit, and then who our thoughts on, as it is standing now, might fit into this roster based on those decisions that came out, and then a little bit of a fun projected starting 11, again, as of December 3rd. Comparing that at the beginning of free agency to the end, I think will be kind of funny to see how off we are
Should
and how much
definitely be interesting.
goes on. So we'll roll into it. Yesterday, like we mentioned, the roster decisions finally came out. I think we're like one of the last clubs besides the two actually in the MLS Cup Finals, but we finally got it. We exercised the contract options of Miles Robinson, Obi, Sergio Santos, and Alvaro Barreal. Sam, what's your initial thoughts on these guys?
Interesting, right? I think the only thing that stands out for those two, are Miles obviously coming back. That's awesome. That's huge. A lot of people didn't see him coming back, but he is back. Where else would he kind of go, right? Coming off the season he was good. He was solid in moments, but just not up to the European game, if you will. With Obi, we kind of saw this coming, hoping to kind of restructure his DP contract to bring him out of that spot so that way we can bring in somebody else as well. Sergio Santos, a little bit interesting. I know, before in the past couple episodes, he's making a lot of money with the amount of production that he has right now. So interesting to see him being brought back with the production, but obviously, we've heard he's a huge locker room guy. He's got a lot of MLS experience, might be able to help out as a sub, as the matches continue next season. But Alvaro Barreal, definitely a huge sign there, coming back to the squad after December 31st when his loan ends. The talks are he'll just be shopped until then to try and find a new home for him. But yeah, those are kind of my first thoughts there. What do you think?
Yeah, honestly, four guys that I potentially had thought, hey, they might be here, they might not. And we'll talk a little bit about what Chris Albright had mentioned in the press conference about several of these guys. But number one being Miles. A lot of chatter online. Is he going to stay? What fit does he have in this roster? He's eating a lot of roster space and money, but the back line never looked better. So honestly, I'd be pumped to see Miles back for 2025. And I think, like we mentioned, Obi as well, with the DP situation, as you mentioned, another one that could be a questionable part. Is he going to fit this role in center mid that he's been in the last couple of years? Or are we going to turn a new chapter, in the midfield? Sergio, Sam, I think you covered that brilliantly. and Alvaro. So as Sam mentioned, that loan expires, but kind of surprised to see like we trigger this option. Is that a play to own his rights? I think is really what it came down to, so that we can sell him. And if it isn't with Cruzeiro, maybe it's with somebody else, but you have better bargaining chip that way. So I think it really came down to that. Again, we'll touch on that in Chris's comments. Options that were declined, though. So a lot of these products that we're going to touch on, I believe, is not having really that cap space. Again, we're not the podcast to go into that too much, but that's really what I'm seeing. And hey, they're not getting much minutes for this team. They're young for a lot of these guys, and then we have a lot of FCC2 players that are going to be stepping into roles and not taking as much of the cap space. So that might be a better fit for them. So London Agato, Joey Akpinonu, we had Isaiah Foster, Kip Keller. Sam, I thought you had an interesting comment. It can't be promised those minutes. We're so deep now in that center back role. He did fit a need, during the summer. Did okay at times, kind of brutally bad in some certain situations. But yeah, it was a easy move, I think, last year, bringing in Kip and trying to see if that would work. A guy that we had scouted before. Kimi Ordonez, Malik Pinto, Nico Giacchini, and Kevin Kelsey kind of rounded out those guys. So any thoughts on those guys, Sam?
Yeah, like you said, Kip Keller, great player. I honestly, it's a little tough. He definitely deserves more minutes than we're going to be able to give him, right? And unfortunately, that's just the case with all the guys that we've brought in. Ian Murphy is even kind of being left to the wayside, if you will. As we talk about the starting lineup here at the end of the episode, but guys like Malik Pinto, I know we talked about this kind of last episode, but the fall off from one of the most sub appearances in the MLS in 2023 to falling pretty much out of the squad in 2024. But yeah, I know with Kevin Kelsey, there was talks, for the past couple of weeks, we were actually trying to extend the loan or buy it out at 5 mil or below 5 mil. But Shakhtar, honestly, they just we're not budging from that 5 mil evaluation, and just way too much for that kind of production and maturity right now for Kevin Kelsey. So we wish him the best of luck.
Would have been a nice piece for next year, again, with another striker to kind of guide him as he progresses in his career. But yeah, like we don't want to overspend, and we have a $16 million striker that is going to eat a ton of minutes. So you don't want Kelsey being paid a ton and not playing. So I think kind of a wise decision if it did come down to that on the price tag. Pinto was an interesting one, especially, we praised him throughout the past probably year and a half. Didn't really see much. He had a nagging, I believe, foot or ankle injury during the year. So honestly, it's kind of puzzling because I felt like a young player that kind of stepped from the academy up. But I think we saw Dado kind of win that battle in terms of minutes. And it'll be interesting to see that moving forward. So yeah, all these guys, important pieces. I think Chris Albright had even mentioned it. A lot of these guys were part of the Supporters Shield roster the year before. We appreciate their contributions really more than anything for the club. And I think all of them were great representatives of the team. Great team guys, great players. Just didn't find the fit for, what we need moving forward. So to kind of mention the next part of things, expired contracts, but still in talks. So Yamil Assad and Nick Hagelin. Nick's back, let's be honest. That's it. That's a given. Assad, all indications are that, FC wants to bring him back. If you heard Albright's talk this afternoon about it, they felt like he performed a little bit above what they were expecting. They declined his option. It sounds like more of a roster mechanism type thing. They want to keep him on the supplemental roster spot. If they would have used that option, he would have been on a senior roster spot, which again eats more of the space. So it's kind of navigating those waters and figuring out, which I don't envy these guys for doing, but would love to have Yamil back next year. Was a nice piece for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those two guys, you could definitely see them being brought back. Nick Hagelin, we'll see what kind of role he'll have next season. Once again, kind of more of a locker room role, FC Cincinnati loyalist kind of role, to be able to get the guys going, next to Miazga and, the rest of the guys to be able to help out, especially with the amount of competitions that we still have to play, this upcoming season. Not really sure where U.S. Open Cup lies. Maybe we're one of the teams that has to play in it. So, we'll see going forward. That could be another added competition. So a lot of the rotation in the back line should be good this year. Emil Assad. Yeah, I think with having Orshano back, we'll talk about that soon. But I think signing Emil, I think that'll probably happen here soon as well to keep Lucho happy if we can.
Yeah, and I see if he's not a starter, he's definitely a spot starter or a depth piece in the wing back positions, and has that chemistry with some of the guys as well, which, yeah, is invaluable. And if you can bring him back on a supplemental spot, like that's huge. So good business if that can happen. But deals that got done, number one, Brett Halsey, Sam, you had tweeted out, would be a nice kind of transition for him to find more minutes, especially in multiple competitions. Hopefully Halsey can kind of transition under Yedlin and really learn from him at the right wing back spot. Maybe it's the left wing back spot. We reworked that contract. They originally declined it, but then reworked it. So hopefully, again, that's more of a mechanism type thing. Will be interesting to see his fit. If he is a candidate for a loan, possibly if he's trying to get more minutes. Maybe they're just not ready for him to fully step in, but I'm glad to at least see another young player sticking around.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's one of those guys that we continue to see potential from. Regardless if he gets the minutes. Honestly, it's kind of a Malik Pinto situation. He just got to stay, right? Whereas Pinto didn't get to stay. Brett Halsey gets extended till 2025, like you said, with 26, 27. So I think we'll see what happens there. If we do see development, I think they really want him to take that left wing back spot. They really do. But obviously, they're going to give him competition on the left side, whether it be Emil Assad or somebody they bring in. So I think this is a very crucial offseason for Brett Halsey to be able to show what he can do, down in Florida.
Yeah, take that next leap. I mean, that's really what you want from your younger guys is to step in from the academy to first team minutes to finding your starting spot and owning it. Throughout the league, we see that, especially Philadelphia. So would be nice for him to do. The big news of the day, Sam, let's be honest. I mean, FC Cincinnati triggering the purchase of Luca Orishano. What a steal, honestly. I mean, just gigantic for the club to purchase this player for $3 million, which again, Vasco da Gama is probably like kicking themselves because of the value that this guy has. But yeah, we triggered that. There's a lot of reports. Is he gonna, be triggered or not? It's like it's a no-brainer. This is happening. The roster designation still to be determined. I don't think he's gonna fit that DP spot. There's potential based on the amount of money that we pay him for it, but I'm thinking they're gonna try to bring in outside if they need to kind of open up mechanisms that way. He did miss out on the MLS Best 11. He would be an honorable shout if it wasn't so attacking heavy. Like I think there was only like 3 defenders that were even listed. And Albo was really the only outside back that was even on there, I believe, correct?
Yeah, yes, I believe so.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy. But we've talked about Luca at nauseum. Was the finalist for the MLS Newcomer of the Year, and then you see him, being bought for $3 million, and you're like, wow, okay, that's not bad at all. So hopefully we can continue good business like that with loan to buy situations, Sam. Finding that diamond in the rough. Does the Veliz team down in Argentina have any more Barrials or Orishanos down there that we can reach out to? I don't know.
I know. It's almost like who's the next Argentinian up top, or up next, right? That we're going to be picking from the diamonds in the rough down there.
It's interesting. I want to go and kind of look and see any of these other guys down there that could potentially come up. That would be pretty cool. But like I mentioned, Chris Albright did have that press conference. We appreciate him doing that today. And kind of why again we waited to put it out because we wanted to hear his thoughts on it. The Lucho conversation, the big eye emoji thing of like what's going to happen. It's still ongoing apparently. They're having conversations with him. Um, the question was asked, did his comments after the game change his status as the captain, credibility in the locker room, especially him not speaking, afterwards, but going on ESPN Argentina and talking, and then going to Boca Juniors. Over the weekend, he went to the game down in Argentina. His son's wearing the jersey. Like, there's a lot of indications of like he's settling in Argentina, but I have to go back and remind myself in off seasons past, like he's done this. He's gone down to Argentina before, spent time there in the off season. It's the question of like Alvaro Barrial from last year. Is he going to come back?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. He's loving Boca Juniors down there. He's everybody's seeing on his Instagram stories, down there with his kid. Is it vacation? Is it a permanent stay? Like, who knows? I think ultimately Lucho's just hopefully nursing, his two ankles, 2 feet, whatever he's got going on. Hopefully he'll come back to the squad healthy. Relax right now. He's doing exactly what he needs to be doing. And hopefully he just comes back to the squad.
What was telling to me is he didn't outright say, we want him here. He said, we want what's best for him.
I think
And
that's
that
just the
to me
language that
is
they've been using, though.
that's what they've been using. But like, if you outright want this guy, like you should say that. In the back of my head, I'm thinking like they don't really know where this is going. They said they've had good conversations with him and his agent. Who knows what that means? They've hopefully had a good relationship in that way. Um, Honestly, like I feel like a lot is riding on this, and like a lot of people have been saying is like in some ways the sooner the better. Like if we can figure out this solution, like it does help us to develop a roster. And like I know Chris in this press conference, if you go and listen to it, the question was even asked like, how does this affect your offseason decisions? And he's like, hey, we feel pretty good about the roster we have, but I mean it opens up a whole new world, if you don't have him. So you have to prepare, A, B, and C plans in the setting of he's here or he's not here. So I'm sure they're looking at those different options. I know online, I believe one person at least was listing a whole bunch of options of people that could fill Lucho's shoes. But let's be honest, the dude's the best FC Cincinnati player we've seen, possibly one of the best in the league, MLS best 11 again. Like, it's going to be hard to replace him regardless. And I don't envy at some point whoever fills his shoes or has to even think about doing that. Like that's just an impossible task.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's a lot of things in this Chris Albright press conference that stand out. I'm glad they do it. Shout out to Carter Chapley for sharing the live stream. There's a
Yeah.
lot of good little nitbits that honestly we took out of this.
Yeah, the Barrial one was the big one for me as well. You see him like get this option picked up, and you're like, hold on a sec, like, is there a chance? And you see him doing the clapping emoji when Luca gets signed,
Yeah.
so he's like supporting his boy. Is there an option for him? Does that sway Lucho to say, hey, if I get Yamil, I get Barrial, let's get the gang back together? Maybe Junior Mourinho wants to come play some minutes again. It would be incredible. I like that Chris at least says like there's always a chance that this could happen, but I think it has to fall through with, hey, these teams don't hit this valuation we have for this player. Ultimately, he ends up back with us, but that's not what the player wants. We saw it last year. He wanted a new opportunity. And honestly, like the amount of general allocation money that he would bring to support the center back depth that they want, like they are actively, like you said earlier in the podcast, looking for an opportunity for him elsewhere, whether it's with Cruzeiro or not. What was revealed today is that the deadline passed. We had agreed upon a loan with the option to buy at $4 million, apparently, and that had passed timeline wise. But they're still negotiating with Cruzeiro, and they still have some time until the 31st of December when he has that loan that ends. Then he'll be back with FC Cincinnati. But what does that look like? We own his rights. We can sell him outright, maybe find a better deal and even make even more money than the 4 million. There was reports out of Brazil actually though that he was dealing with a sports hernia over the past few months. So I don't know how that impacts his transfer status moving forward. Do teams look at that and say, do we take a risk? You know, he's been playing through this injury, but he came out in a press conference and said it. There was another interview today with him, and he said, honestly, I don't know where I'm going to be in January. So even the player is not sure, but he's still going on the FCC media, Sam, and he's putting some of the emojis out and supporting the boys. I know throughout the year he was doing it too. So there's still some connection there.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited to see what happens here. I think this will be the big talk as far as like within the club during this off season as far as like moves. Obviously, we know a lot of guys are going to be coming into the squad, but this is one to definitely watch to see, can we continue to does he want to be here, right? That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, no, it comes down to that. Yeah, that's really what it is, you know. And if he does, then great. Maybe we find a way
Maybe
to
maybe
include
he'll
him.
only
But
come for beach day again.
yeah, one day.
Yeah,
Just
he'll
wants to
come
come
for
to
beach
Clear.
day.
He wants to come to Clearwater Beach, Sam. Let's be
Yes,
honest.
yeah.
He just
That's
wants
all
to
he
go
wants.
and experience that, and then he's good. Yeah, that was very interesting last year. But past that, the other decisions, like I mentioned earlier, Assad, like Chris straight out came out and just was like, "Hey, look, Assad, we're hoping to be back," you know, and we touched on it earlier just with how he fits into the roster, Hagelin as well. And at some point, like being even in the front office too, is what Chris said, which I think would be cool and an ambassador for the club, which everyone's known for a while. Like that's the future of Nick Hagelin. But past that, the other interesting one, Sam, you know, again, a lot of chatter about Miles Robinson. Is he staying? Is he going? Where's his fit in the center back room right now? Um, Chris says, hey, I see him as a long-term fit for this club. To me, that means he wants him to stay. Maybe that means the player wants to stay. I honestly think a lot of this rides on his opportunity for the World Cup in 2026. Right now, he's in a stable spot with a lot of minutes. He's a starter. He's looking good for us. If he goes to Europe, it's an unknown. He's got to fight for a spot. You know, Pochettino for the US has said, I like MLS guys and I need people to play. And if he's playing, then he's got a chance for that. And that's got to be a dream for him since he missed the previous one with his Achilles. So I think that's weighing high on him. If the fit is right somewhere else and they get, you know, honestly, we say quote unquote the bag, like if he gets a big paycheck to go to like San Diego on this expansion, you know, maybe that happens that way. But everything today points to Miles staying for a while, which honestly I'm not mad about at all.
No, he's going to get the most minutes with us. I think that's clear. I don't. I think it's a similar scenario where I don't see him playing for any other MLS club, like you said, unless there's a big bag. I think that's similar with Lucho, right? That I think Tom Bogert has spoken on that. There's no way he'd go to another MLS club, but I think
I
for
would
my
never say never with Miles for the MLS
no,
clubs,
I'm
but
just saying unless there's a big bag, right? Like obviously, like Lucha would
he just
go,
needs to
but
be the
there
focal
needs to be a
point in the
big
back
bag.
line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't think Miles though is gonna be a big signing for a team like San Diego, right? I feel like
Really?
I don't. I don't. Given the season that he had, I think he would be if he was our number one center back. He's not. Even coming off an injury, Miles or Matt Miazga is, right? So I
I
think,
just feel like the veteran leadership that he could bring to a
yeah,
expansion team would be invaluable. I mean, he was the top prospect in the free agent class last year, and we saw how he was able to, you know, be healthy throughout this year, knock on what he is next year. I think as an expansion side, like you would love that opportunity for Miles Robinson.
I'm not so sure about that because it for San Diego maybe, but for him, I think you want something stable right now in your career
Yeah,
because that's a project over there. You have no idea, what next
stability is
season
key,
could be. Whereas like
right?
FC Cincinnati is going to be top five at least, right, for the
Right.
next 2 to 3 seasons, as long as they've got this core and Chris Albright is cooking up there at the GM role. So I think with FC Cincinnati, he sees it as an opportunity to either go back to Europe or to prove to Poch like, hey, I've been working hard. I'm starting, we're one of the best clubs in the MLS rather
Right.
than, hey, I'm a part of a project and we'll see how this goes.
The good and the bad of having solid center backs who are involved with international play. The good is it's great exposure for your team. The
Yeah.
bad is that the way that the MLS is currently structured, a lot of these guys miss time in the MLS season, like we saw with Miles, with Olympic play, with the other competitions, Copa America. What Chris was highlighting in his conference today is like multiple competitions, Sam. Leagues Cup, Open Cup, like there's so many different competitions. If Miles is out with US, if Tina Chidebe is out with Zimbabwe, if we say Cheeto is with Nigeria, maybe even Miazga gets a US call up, like then it changes your depth. And they really wanted starters that they could pull off the bench full strength, but because it's so stretched out, there's so many opportunities with international play. Like I think you're right. I think he might see it like I have this potential to play with a good club, make good money, be competitive, still play with a national team, and then it's benefiting both teams, or both sides, I should say, international club, like all
Yeah.
of it. So I was really happy to see him come out and really immediately say, like, we see him here long term. I think that's a play for, getting him to the World Cup in 2026. Honestly, it was what that comes down to.
Yep.
Kelsey, like we mentioned, the valuation was off. We'll miss him in the striker position. We'll touch a little bit on what that looks like depth wise. And then the last thing that I thought was interesting about Albright's press conference was that he mentioned like we want to get Luca Orishano closer to goal. So moving forward, they see him in a dueling 10 or a striker position, which helps to kind of predict the lineup for next year from our standpoint. But yeah, he was way more deadly up there. But props to him, at his age and without as much experience in left wing back, right wing back to fill in those spots when he did. But moving forward, like let's solidify him in that role, which I think is just going to be incredible to see a Denke and Luca Orishano up top. That's going to be incredible.
Yeah, obviously towards the end of the season there, we saw Luca get more time up top. I'm with you. I think it'll be interesting to see how him and Denke are able to feed off of each other. Because I think they play different styles. Because Luca's more finesse, more dribbling, more kind of that style. And it seems like Denke is not more physical, be able to take on defenders even with his small stature, but able to both kind of have those bursts of speed. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on there.
Both are like aggressive in the way that they like find the
Yeah,
goal though.
yeah,
And that's
absolutely,
what we've been missing. Like having guys to shoot from outside. Like Luca was only really one this year that would pull the trigger and be accurate with it.
literally,
So
yeah,
I mean, feeding off of each other, him creating and then finding Denke in good positions, like is a chef's kiss, like dream, for a coach. And you add Lucho possibly in the equation to that, like good luck defenses. Yeah, definitely excited to talk about that a little bit more. But we also had FC Cincinnati two roster decisions today, Sam. We had decline options for several players. If you want to walk us through.
yeah. Several players. I believe there's only like seven left on the roster for FC Cincinnati too, which is kind of crazy. But Hunter Morse, Gail Gilbert, Moises Tablante. Big one, I think, for you and me, Nico Benalcazar. Kind of surprising there, shown a lot of promise. Interesting. It really is. Do
Mhm.
you want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah, Nico did find himself on the bench for the Dallas game. We thought, hey, maybe this is a breakthrough for him, an opportunity to play the center back role. He was practicing with the squad, so something tells me like you're going to keep a deep back line. You don't really see him progressing to your first team. He's getting older. He's like, I think 24, 25 possibly. So maybe a better opportunity in another academy or even with another MLS team to make their starting roster. He might be requiring a higher salary at that point. I'm not really sure. But I was definitely surprised by that as well. I thought it would be a nice piece moving forward that you could see as a young center back step into an MLS role.
Yeah, yeah. And then Jesus Castellano, Guilherme Santos, and then for me, another one, Ben Stitz. I feel like he's been
Mm.
with the club for a long time. I want to say he was an academy kid, came into FCC too. He actually has had some minutes in the first team last year, maybe. So another kind of surprising one there.
Especially with how well the team did, like you would think they would want to bring back a solid core for next year. I honestly think it really kind of touches on how deep the academy is, that you have guys that are coming in from the maybe U17, U18 youth ranks that are now going to fill the FCC2 spots. Like we didn't have as much of the academy built up early on, but now you can not necessarily shop from different MLS Next
Yeah.
Pro teams and kind of transition these guys through. We did see Sharilla's brother got re-signed, Sam, which is kind of nice to see the brothers stay in Cincinnati together, and that will hopefully convince Stefan to stay for a little bit. Obviously he's going to be with the first team next year, but the other one that was kind of interesting, Amir Daly, I think honestly has a future and a wing spot for the team. He might be practicing with us more coming up next year. From all that I was hearing, he was a pretty solid player.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all these guys, obviously, once again, kind of like the first team, we wish them the best. Some of them we're going to follow and be able to root for on the side, unless they're playing for the crew.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, like you said, this is a testament to development, and not really, like you said. I mean, yeah, we were good, but did we develop our players? Can we develop better players? Are we developing better players that, next season, hey, we already see these guys taking over their spots, right? So I think that plays a big part in all of this.
Yeah, I mean, before you would just shop around and bring in and convince these guys to come in, but maybe now you're, like you said, you're filling those spots that way. So will be interesting to follow. It's honestly fun to see some of the FCC2 guys transition, and to see them from the academy ranks move on. We're gonna keep an eye on that, as we move forward. And we tried to do that a little bit more this year, so I hope you guys appreciated that. Lucho Acosta was named today to the MLS Best 11 for the third consecutive year, fourth time in his career, surpassed Diego Valeri and Christian Gomez for the most Best 11 honors by an Argentinian player. Holy smokes, Sam. Like, unbelievable honor for him. We knew it was coming. Still a slap in the face. He wasn't an MLS MVP candidate. Still upset about that, but everyone knew he was in the best 11.
Yeah, absolutely, especially when you're one of the best midfielders in the world, declared by FIFA as well. So
Say that one more time for people so they can hear that one again.
one of the best midfielders in the world, by FIFA themselves, but also being, best 11 this season. He absolutely deserved it. Like you said, third consecutive season with FC Cincinnati winning that. Obviously, he's killing the game because the members of the media see it, MLS players see it, and the technical staff. Those are all the people that kind of determine the starting 11 here, or the all 11 best 11. So I think his contributions, obviously, they speak for themselves. But he clearly is one of the best players and will continue to be the best player in the MLS in our eyes, as long as
It's
he
crazy,
wears
Sam.
the orange and blue.
Yeah, well, I mean, to see him listed with the likes of Kevin De Bruyne and, Rodri and all of these guys around the world, in the midfield spot, like that's a huge honor. You mentioned MLS players in the media, like now this is outside of that. This is the world. I mean, imagine if we compared it to the NFL, but there was a worldwide NFL type, football. I mean, we're talking every single organization across the world that has at least come together to say like Lucho's the real deal, and we knew that here. Now we just got to keep him. I'd be heartbroken to see all this happen and then, for him to move on. But yeah, unbelievable player. We'll see. We'll leave it at that. Notable free agents, Sam. We'll get into this here. A lot of the roster decisions, like I mentioned, have come out now. We had several players kind of interestingly listed as free agents that could be brought in. There is a whole process for free agency, re-entry draft, waivers. Like MLS is so complex when it comes to this stuff. I wanted you to kind of highlight a few guys that you could see, at least initially, now that we have some of these listed, as options for us moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so my list of just notable players is pretty long, so I won't bore you with all of them. But some guys that kind of stand out to me, maybe similar to Ryan's list. You can touch on them whenever you feel like it, Ryan. But first one up, obviously, just touched on the team. We don't really like him, but he's a great player. Alexandre Matan. I think having 4 goals, 3 assists. He's still 25 years old. He's an incredible player that can play on the wing or kind of in the middle there. Leon Fleck for the Philadelphia Union had 3 assists this season, only 23 years old. So he's a great player, I believe, in the midfield. And then one that stood out to me, I know we've been in talks of having kind of a veteran presence up top. I know we have that with Sergio Santos a little bit, but Bobby Wood in the New England Revolution, letting him go. He had 4 goals this past season. Maybe doesn't have his best legs with him kind of in the past, but he could be that figure in the community as well as, with the squad being able to bring a veteran presence. Another one that I've been shopping for at least 2 years now, and Jalen Lindsey with Charlotte FC. When we were looking this past offseason to bring in a left back, I was like, go get him. Like he's got promise. Didn't really do much this season for Charlotte FC, but he wasn't really given a lot of the minutes that we think he should be. Still 24 years old, so we'll see with that. Joseph Martinez, I think might be one of the biggest free agent names right now out of all the decisions being made. He had 11 goals, 3 assists. Pretty solid season with CF Montreal. 31 years old. Once again, pure goal scorer. Might be another guy we could bring off the bench. Might be a little pricey though. We'll see if we could do anything with that, right? Two guys that I kind of just want to touch on real quick in Junior Moreno and Matt Hedges. Junior Moreno could bring him back. Matt Hedges, we've been in talks with him for a while. So who knows, right? Love more center back depth. Alex Ring with Austin FC, 2 goals, 7 assists. Veteran midfielder would bring a good presence in the midfield, playmaking, kind of depth that we need in the midfield to be able to help Buka. Buka's our starter. He's our playmaker. But I think having kind of somebody underneath him to be able to rotate in, especially like we talked about those competitions. Another guy who could rotate in would be Drew Yearwood, younger presence, 24 years old, Nashville SC, 1 goal, 4 assists. Honestly, a really good player, promising. The last guy, he's a forward, Ariel Lassiter with Chicago, 31 years old, proven goal scorer, 3 goals, 7 assists this past season. So there's a lot of options there. Those are kind of the highlights there, Ryan. Feel free to pick apart any of my analysis or just go straight into what you got.
Yeah, we had a lot of the same guys. I think you had a good shout with Matan, with Columbus. A lot of people in the town up north were very interested by the fact that he was a free agent or had his contract declined. Romanian international player, but would fit a nice depth piece. I know he
Is
is
he buddies with
Shirilla.
Stefan Shirilla?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Shrilla's been on the Romanian national team for U18, so that's a good shout. Matan would be it would be cool to see the opposite happen in terms of a Columbus player come down. I think we've had several FCC guys that they have taken. I don't know if we've had the reverse yet, honestly. So that would be interesting. I had highlighted to you earlier that Leon Flock would be a cool one at Philadelphia. You mentioned only had 3 assists, but had a game-winning goal in the playoffs against us 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I believe. So Philly connection, that would be
Yeah.
an easy one to look at. He's only 23, so maybe you can bring him in on a lower price. Like you said, a lot of this comes down to where do we see fit with the roster? Where do we see fit with these guys like being okay with a lesser role? A lot of the ones you mentioned, I think, agree that they're more depth pieces, would you say,
Yeah,
or spot
absolutely.
starters,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
not locked in day one starters? If we're going to look for that in a left wing back role, maybe you could say Lindsay, but I wouldn't even go that far.
Nah,
Maybe
nah.
Matan, because he played that role with Columbus for a few times. But past that, I think your glaring spot right now is left wing back and depth piece for your midfield. And for me, I saw Jackson Yule that could be a really, really good depth piece. So San Jose let this guy go. He's a center mid and defensive center mid. He split captain Sam in San Jose for I think like 27 different games. He was their captain. They just declined his option. He's 27 years old, tons of MLS experience, has played for the U.S. men's national team. Him and Abogasi in San Jose are going to be huge free agents. So honestly, I think Yule's going to ask a high penny, and I don't think we'll be able to afford him. He wants to start. That would be a dream spot to bring him in, though. Matan, same thing. I think like if you're looking at San Diego, like you look at some of these guys and say, all right, we need to add them. I think Flock is more likely based on the Philly connection, the youth, some of the connection with the coaching staff. I think is a good one. And then Jalen Lindsay, I think was a good shout. We talked about him before too, but more again depth than anything. And
He's like a similar situation that I would put with Halsey, right?
yeah,
And those are kind of very similar players, honestly, similar ages, right? To where they're promising, but they don't have enough experience yet in the first team to be able to rely on them day in, day out as your starter on the left
right.
back.
What are your thoughts, Sam? FCC legend Kai Kamara is a free agent right now.
Nah, 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 nah,
He
nah.
had 12 goals this year.
I believe he retired from international football, right? Um, I mean,
You talked about veteran presence.
I did. I'd rather put money into a guy like Joseph Martinez rather than Akai Kamara. But
So the only thing with both of them, from what I'm hearing, they're both locker room problems. And the way that we have it right now, like you have a
yeah, that would be the
great locker room
worst
presence.
thing for us right now.
Yeah, I mean we've had that and it wasn't good. But Kevin Denke apparently is, class player, class individual.
Great
He's going
locker
to
room
come in
guy.
and gel
Yeah.
well. Yeah, Santos is there in that striker spot. I think you bring in a depth striker piece. You already have Corey Baird, I guess, if you want to say that is there too, and Chirilla. But yeah, I think you go out and you look at one more striker for sure. Midfield depth, like we mentioned, that's the big one too. And left wing back spots for a starting one. The way it is now, I don't see fit a starting guy there unless we trade for it. But what are your thoughts?
So there is one guy that could be a left wing back plug in, and he is a free agent, and Raheem Edwards, he's a free agent
A good shout.
from CF Montreal, 25 appearances with them in MLS play, 5 assists from the left wing back spot, and his value continues to go up. He's a Jamaican international, so he's got experience there. Him and Alvis Powell are probably buddies. But he's got tons and tons of MLS experience. His only downfall there is he's been on like 5, 6 different MLS teams throughout his tenure, right? So could he be another locker room situation, or what kind of is going on there behind the scenes?
Yeah, he last year he was traded for 400,000 in general allocation money. So that would be a high price potentially. That was a trade. Obviously, he's a free agent now. Contract wise, he had been around 350,000. Might be a good shout though. He played with LA Galaxy before and had done pretty decent with them. So something to look out for. Just some names that we're looking at now. The timeline of things, like I mentioned, is just so complex. You have December 9th, which is next Monday. You have the half day trade window where you can get other MLS teams to be able to trade between. And then by Wednesday, the 11th, we're going to have the MLS expansion draft, which I think Chris Albright touched on. How do we protect? We have 12 guys that we have to protect. We can say, all right, we want these guys to stay. All the other guys can be eligible to be chosen. John Nelson was chosen in 2022 by St. Louis. It used to be the MLS rule, Sam, that once you have one selected from your team, you're exempt from future expansion drafts. The MLS is going to MLS, and they changed the rules on that. So now we're eligible for players to be chosen again. Thank you, Carter Chapley, for telling everyone about that. That was very helpful. But yeah, how do you pick 12 guys? Right now we have such a stud lineup, and roster. Kevin Denke is exempt. Luca Orshano is exempt. Shirilla is exempt. So all those guys are off the list. I think Barrial as well, because he's on loan currently. So I could think of 12 guys right now. Hopefully we won't get anyone chosen. That would just be brutal for another expansion draft. So we'll see about that. Free agency opens on December 12th. Any player 24 years or older who had their contract declined or are a free agent and have had 5 years of service in MLS are eligible for that. Different than the reentry process, which is 22 and older with 1 year of service. It's so complex, man. Like all these different windows on who's available and when, and it's hard to follow, honestly. And they need to simplify some of it, in my opinion. But free agency has done us well last year, with Miles. So we'll see what we do with that. Bringing someone in without having to trade for him has always been a big thing. How do we find the spots for them? It'll be interesting. And then do we even look at the MLS Super Draft like we used to? We got, Roman Celentano and Ian Murphy out of that. But since then, we haven't really found somebody to be consistent. That Super Draft is going to be on Friday, December 20th. So I would say, Sam, by the end of December, we're going to have a better idea, even more of who's going to be on this roster. And it's going to happen quick.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, this whole process is interesting. Needs to be smoothed out a lot more, but like you said, there's a lot going on. You just got to look deeper, got to look into these things, got to be, just love soccer, right? You got to love the nitty-gritty, the off-season stuff, the stuff that makes other people kind of snore and snooze and wake up and it's Champions Cup time, right? So we're here for it. We're excited for it. And we're going to be helping you all the way through every single part of these.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, that's a lot to digest with rosters and stuff. If we shake it down to who's actually on this team and what does 2025 look at, let's simplify it. December 3rd, when we're recording, we're going to give you our projected starting lineup for 2025. And I cannot wait to be just completely wrong. We're going to clip this right now, and we're going to, at the end of free agency, have a completely wrong lineup. But as it stands right now, I like the lineup that we have, Sam. My projected one, Roman Celentano in goal. Left wing back, as it currently stands, I'm going to go with Emil Assad. I think he's going to be in. I think Barrial is gone. I think by the time February comes around, we're still going to be looking for an international left wing back, in my opinion. I don't think we'll find one within the league. So I'm going to go with Assad. I'm going to go actually on the left center back role. I think I'm going to go with Miles Robinson there. I'm going to go with Matt Miazga in the middle. And I'm going to go with Cheeto on the right center back. I'm going to have DeAndre Yedlin at right wing back. I'm going to have Obi and Buka again. I think you stick with what's been there. I'm going to hope that Lucho's there. I really am. I'm holding out hope that Lucho and Orishano are your dueling tens, and then Denke is your starting striker.
Okay. Pretty solid there. I mean, all the players that you chose are there, right? Are with us
Right.
now. So anybody incoming who could be a new DP is not in that kind of fold there.
Who do you put the DP spot at? Where do you put him?
Left back, left wing back right
You're
now.
going to put a designated player at left wing back.
I mean, like you
I don't
said,
know.
right?
I don't know
Like
where
you
else
said,
you go.
if you drop Obi down, right, to a DP or to a not a
Non-DP.
DP, you're not going to replace him, right? Because he should be a starter. He's just not DP worthy, right? So it gets
Not
very
DP worthy based on his contract,
yes, that's what I
which
yes.
is a good
Yeah.
thing. But I think that it's an interesting situation. Maybe it's a good thing that you do have this spot. Maybe another striker at that DP designation. I don't know. Or Sam, my other thought is Man, I totally lost it. I had it and then I lost it. But you change your mechanism actually, and you go with the young DP designation. You go more with those guys than you do with the three designated players. So that's the new MLS rule. You can get four, I believe.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So maybe we go younger and use those four young DPs because of the way that the roster is currently set up.
We'll see. We'll see. My starting 11 for next year. I'm gonna go starting on the left side. I'm gonna go Kubo as our
Whoa.
left wing back, and then I will go Miles Robinson, left center back, Miazga in the middle, Cheeto next to him. I'll go Yedlin as right back. I was thinking about Assad or Yedlin on the right side, but Yedlin will be on that right side. Obviously, Celentano as the goalkeeper. We'll go Buka stays there, Obi stays there. I think you'll have Acosta there in the middle, and I think up there as dueling nines, you put them up there next to each other, Kevin Denke and Luca Oroshano.
So neither one of us think that Barriol is going to be back on the left wing back, do we?
No, no.
But one can dream. I mean, that would be incredible to have. Was he MLS Best 11 last year? I think.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that'd be pretty sick.
He's just got to want to stay, right?
Yeah,
He's got
no,
to
that's what
want
it
to
comes
see a
down
future
to.
here. And if, Luca and Lucho can convince him to have a good time here in Cincinnati and, not try and find bright lights somewhere else, I think,
So listen to this play. If that's the case, we can play hypothetical here. Look at the way the U.S. men's national team played in the last window when Anthony Robinson played higher up on the pitch, and your center backs kind of transition to a back three. Um, there's some thought there that you could have one of those guys cover more ground and play Barrial higher up in the field in the attack. That would be pretty interesting.
yeah, yeah.
They
Obviously,
listed Barrial as a midfielder in the report.
obviously, we need more service into the box. So
Right.
having a guy like Barrial on the left side to be able to whip it in rather than somebody like Assad, I think would be critical. I mean, honestly, we
Left.
need that.
So what you're saying is we need a left-footed player in that position, not Kubo, Sam. I'm giving you crap.
He works
I'm giving
though.
you crap.
He works.
Yeah. So we do have the MLS Cup final coming up. New York Red Bulls is going to play LA Galaxy. Galaxy is going to win, right? I don't. We both hate the Red Bulls.
Yeah, Galaxy's going to win because it's been 10 years, Ryan. Can you believe it? 10 years since the LA Galaxy last won it in 2014. I mean, I feel like they've been competitive, right, for the past 10 years,
Yeah.
just have not kind of gone over the hump there. And my God, if they've got a squad, kind of like you talk about like a three-headed dragon, right? This one's like a five.
You want to talk about the turnaround from even last year? I mean, you had the supporters groups were walking out on the games and
Yeah.
not going because they hated the ownership and the direction that the club was going. They were getting dominated by, Big Brother LAFC. But Sam, you know what they have working for them? You're in LA. So you get the Marco Royces of the world, Joseph Painstills, Gabriel Peck. And I mean, the turnaround is just insane if you really want to look at it. Like FCC had a good turnaround, but for them to go with where they were to where they are now in MLS Cup final, like unbelievable that they could kind of do what they did. And I'm kind of rooting more for that story. And again, just more because I hate the Red Bulls and they kind of lucked their way through what's been going on. Yeah, it's a tournament style and they did make it through, but I'm going to give them a little bit of shade for that. So yeah, interesting to see what happens. And then interesting what new things come up in the next few weeks. We'll be here to cover it. We got a big interview coming up, so stay tuned for our special guest for that. Sam, any final thoughts?
No, just looking forward to more content, like you said. Decisions are done, but that does not mean that we won't get more announcements. So I think we'll see kind of what the roster looks like with Assad and Hagelin, those contract talks and works. So I'm excited.
Yeah, a lot of news. Like we said, the timeline is coming up, and we're excited to bring all that info to you. Thanks again for listening. and we will see you guys soon.